Organization of a dental clinic, department, office, ergonomics and dentistry, deontology, asepsis, antisepsis, disinfection and sterilization as means of prevention of infectious and yatrogenic diseases, histological structure of the teeth, anatomical features of the teeth and various groups, science of teeth, the difference between deciduous and permanent teeth, stages of tooth development, laying, formation, and differentiation of dental rudiments. A lecture for second year, third semester students. Organization of dental polyclinic. The main objectives of dental polyclinic as municipal establishments of healthcare are as follows: the prevention of dental disease in the population, providing high qualified dental care in all dental specialties, providing statistics, calculation, and reports about the incidence of dental disease among the population, investigation and implementation of new methods of prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of dental diseases, improving the skills and knowledge of the entire medical staff, and providing consultation to the population, issue of medical assessments and other documents. The requirements for dental polyclinics. According to provision number 30 of the Russian Federation Law of Healthcare, each patient has right to diagnostics, treatment, and sojourn in appropriate conditions that meet all sanitary and hygienic requirements. Basic sanitary and hygienic requirements for dental clinics and polyclinics are stated in the Directive of Head Sanitary Doctor of Russian Federation, Approval of Sanitation and Hygienic Requirements 2.1.3.2524-09 of 07/07/2009, number 48. These guidelines and requirements, as well as all further requirements described in this chapter, are applicable for all dental polyclinics, clinics, and private dental offices. The main points of requirements are as follows. First, it is allowed to house dental clinics and polyclinics, including radiological and physiotherapy departments, not only in separate buildings, but also in adapted premises incorporated in an apartment building, as well as on ground floors of apartment buildings. In case of incorporating a dental polyclinic in an apartment building, it is mandatory to provide a separate entrance. It is allowed to place rooms for sterilization on underground floors. It is allowed to place sterilization equipment in the same room as dental units, in case there are not more than 3 dental units per one room. For treatment of children, it is necessary to organize a pediatric dentistry department. If polyclinic or clinic is small and there is no possibility or no need to organize a department, it is mandatory to provide pediatric care separately from adults. It can be a dental office designated for children only, or dental care can be carried out in 2 sessions, half a day adults only, and half a day children only. Other rooms can be common for all patients, but as far as possible, a separate waiting room and toilet should be allocated for children. Standards of dental polyclinic construction. A dental polyclinic can be placed in a detached building or incorporated in adapted and building placements of apartment and public buildings. In the case of a dental polyclinic placed in an apartment building, it should be located on the ground floor and have a separate entrance. Dental polyclinics should not have cold and hot running water as well as sewage. On the underground floor, it is allowed to allocate only cloak rooms, showers, toilets, storage rooms, ventilation rooms, compressor systems, sterilization equipment, but no dental offices. The amount and function of premises depends on the polyclinic size, its facilities, and specialization. Every dental clinic or polyclinic should have at least the following premises. First, a hall with a minimal area of 10 meters, a dental surgery, which should be 14 meters for one dental unit, plus 10 meters for every additional dental unit, in case there is more than one dental unit in surgery. Dental offices in educational organizations are an exception. They are allowed to have an area of only 12 meters. The room for staff members with minimal area of 6 meters with a clock room, a toilet with a minimal area of 3 meters, a storage for medicaments and instruments with a minimal area of 3 meters. If there are more than 3 dental units in a clinic or polyclinic, it is necessary to organize the following. The room for sterilization with a minimal area of 6 meters, several dental offices for dentists of different specialties, separate toilets for patients and staff. At large dental polyclinics, the following compartments can be included: the professional oral hygiene office with a minimal area of 10 meters, a surgical unit including pre-operation room, operation room, and a room for patients after surgery, radiography room, dental laboratory, in which the main room should have a minimal area of 7 meters, and specialized premises, the plaster room with a minimal area of 4 meters, and additional offices for administrator, hand nurse, and the other staff. There are following equipment and furniture in dental office. The main equipment is a dental unit which consists of dental chair, compressor, mounted units of doctor and assistant, and a dental light. The chairs for dentists and assistants, table worktop and drawers, cabinets for disinfectants, materials, instruments, etc. Ultraviolet storage chamber with a comparative ultraviolet lamp for storage of sterile instrument, and the first aid kit. Tooth development. The odontogenesis is the process of tooth development. Dental professionals must have a clear understanding of the stages of odontogenesis and the physiologic basis of each stage. The developmental disturbances can occur within each stage of odontogenesis, affecting the physiologic process taking place. Types of dentitions. The term dentition is used to describe the natural teeth in the jaws. There are two dentitions, the primary dentition and permanent dentition. The primary dentition of a child develops during the prenatal period and consists of 12 teeth, which are wrapped and are later shed or exfoliated. As the primary teeth are shed and the jaws grow and mature, the permanent dentition, consisting of as many as 32 teeth, gradually erupts and replaces the primary dentition. Overlapping between the primary and permanent dentition, a preteen has a mixed dentition, having some teeth from both dentitions. Odontogenesis takes place in stages, which occur in sequential fashion for both dentitions. Odontogenesis is a continuous process until completed, and there is no clear-cut beginning or end point between stages. However, these stages are used to help focus on the different events in odontogenesis and are based mainly on the shape of the development structures. After initiation of odontogenesis, the initial identifiable stages in tooth development include the bud stage, the cup stage, and the bell stage. On this side, you can see the sources of tissues for development of various hard tissues and soft tissues of the tooth and the bone. And on this side, with this diagram, you can see the stages of odontogenesis: the initiation stage, the bud stage, the cup stage, the bell stage, apposition stage, and maturation stage. The initiation stage. The odontogenesis of the primary dentition begins between the 6th and 7th week of prenatal development, during the embryonic period. The first stage of tooth development, known as initiation stage, involves the physiologic process of induction, which is an active interaction between the embryologic tissue types. Tooth initiation involves an initial signal from the ectoderm to the mesenchyme. The mesenchyme responds by reciprocally inducing the ectoderm to continue the developmental progression. At the beginning of the 6th week, the stomaderm of the embryo, or primitive mouth, is lined by ectoderm. The outer palm of the ectoderm gives rise to oral epithelium. The oral epithelium initially consists of two horseshoe-shaped bands of tissue at the surface of the stomaderm, one band for each future dental arc. At the same time, deep to the forming oral epithelium, there is a type of mesenchyme known as ectomesenchyme, which is derived from neural crest cells that have migrated to the region. An important acellular structure that separates the oral epithelium and the ectomesenchyme within the stomaderm is the basement membrane. The basement membrane involved here is similar to the one separating all epithelium and connective tissue. During the latter part of the 2nd week, the oral epithelium grows deeper into the ectomesenchyme and is induced to produce a layer of the dental lamina. The growth occurs on the development jaws, where the two future curved dental arcs of the primary dentition will form. The dental lamina begins to form initially in the midline for both arches and progresses posteriorly, and the underlying ectomesenchyme also begins to undergo changes. The second stage of odontogenesis is considered the bud stage, and it occurs at the beginning of the 8th week of prenatal development for the primary dentition. This stage is named for an extensive proliferation of the dental lamina into buds, with these three-dimensional oval masses penetrating into the surrounding ectomesenchyme. At the end of the proliferation process involving the dental lamina of the primary dentition, both the future maxillary arc and the future mandibular arc will each have 10 buds. The underlying ectomesenchyme also undergoes adjacent proliferation. Each of these buds from the dental lamina, together with the surrounding ectomesenchyme, will develop into a tooth germ, with its associative supporting tissue during the next stage. Thus, all the teeth and the associated tissue types develop from both ectoderm and the ectomesenchymal tissue, which is derived from the NCCs. These two distinct tissue types interact in all stages of odontogenesis, supporting the concept of induction. However, only proliferation of these two tissue types occurs during this stage. No structural change occurs in the cells of either the dental lamina or ectomesenchyme, as later occurs with differentiation and morphogenesis of these tissue types. In regions where teeth will not be developing, the dental lamina only remains thickened because it lines the stomaderm but does not produce buds. Later, this non-tooth producing part of the dental lamina disintegrates as the developing oral mucosa comes to line the maturing oral cavity. The cap stage is the third stage of odontogenesis, which occurs for the primary dentition between the 9th and 10th week of prenatal development during the fetal period. The physiologic process of proliferation continues during this stage, but the tooth bud of the dental lamina does not grow into a large sphere surrounded by ectomesenchyme. Instead, there is unequal growth in different parts of the tooth bud, leading to formation of a three-dimensional cap shape overlying the ectomesenchyme that is still attached superiorly to the dental lamina. Thus, not only does proliferation characterize this stage, but various levels of differentiation are also occurring, including the more specific processes of cytodifferentiation, high-state differentiation, and morphodifferentiation. Additionally, during this stage, a primordium of the tooth germ, forms, containing each of the primordial types of tissue necessary to develop the future tooth. Therefore, the predominant physiologic process during the cap stage is one of morphogenesis. From these combined physiological processes, a depression results in the deepest part of each tooth bud of dental lamina, forming the cap shape of the enamel organ. In future development, the enamel organ will produce enamel on the outer surface of the crown of the tooth. The innermost margin of the cap shape of the enamel organ orchestrates the future crown form of the tooth, such as cusps. A part of the ectomesenchyme deep to the buds has now condensed into a mass within the concavity of the cap of the enamel organ. This inner mass of ectomesenchyme is now considered the dental papilla. The dental papilla will produce the future dentin and pulp for the inner part of the tooth. However, a basement membrane still exists as before, but now it is between the enamel organ and the dental papilla, being the site of the future dentin-enamel junction. The remaining ectomesenchyme surrounding the outside of the cap of the enamel organ condenses into the dental sac, or dental follicle. In future development, the capsule-like dental sac will produce the periodontum, the surrounding tissue types of the tooth, including cementum, periodontal ligament, and alveolar process. At the end of the cap stage, these three embryologic structures, the enamel organ, dental papilla, and dental sac, are now considered together to be the tooth germ, which is the primordial of the tooth. These initial 10 tooth germs, housed within each of the two developing dental arches, develop into the primary dentition after each tissue type undergoes differentiation. Already at the 10th week of prenatal development during the cap stage for each primary tooth, initiation is occurring for the anterior teeth of the permanent dentition and then later for the premolars of the permanent dentition. Each primordium for this initially formed permanent teeth appears as an extension to the dental lamina into the ectomesenchyme lingual to the developing primary tooth germs. Its site of origin is the successional dental lamina. The fourth stage of odontogenesis is considered the Bell stage, which occurs for the primary dentition between the 11th and 12th week of prenatal development. It is characterized by continuation of the ongoing processes of proliferation, differentiation, and morphogenesis. However, differentiation of on all levels occur to its furthest extent, and as a result, 4 different types of cells are now found within the animal organ. On this diagram, you can see the types of cells at the Bell stage. The cell types on Bell stage include the outer enamel epithelium, stellate reticulum, stratum intermedium, and inner enamel epithelium, which are listed from outer to inner. Thus, the backup stage of the animal organ, evident during the last stage, now assumes a three-dimensional bell shape as the undersurface of the cap deepens. During this stage, the tooth crown assumes its final shape through the morphodifferentiation, and the cells that will be making the hard tissue of the crown, ameloblasts and odontoblasts, undergo further histodifferentiation. The outer cuboidal cells of the animal organ are the outer enamel epithelium. It serves as a protective barrier for the rest of the animal organ during the animal production. The innermost tall columnar cells of the animal organ are the inner enamel epithelium. In future development, the inner enamel epithelium will differentiate by phases into enamel-secreting cells. However, a basement membrane still remains between the inner enamel epithelium and the adjacent dental papilla. Between the outer enamel epithelium and inner enamel epithelium are two enamel layers, the stellate reticulum and stratum intermedium. The stellate reticulum consists of star-shaped cells in many layers, forming a network. The stratum intermedium is made up of a compressed layer of flat cuboidal cells. Both of these two intermediately placed layers of the animal organ help support the future production of animal. At the same time, for the dental papilla, within the concavity of the animal organ also undergoes extensive differentiation, so now it consists of two types of tissue in layers: outer cells of the dental papilla and central cells of the dental papilla. In future development, the outer cells of the dental papilla will differentiate into dentin-secreting cells, odontoblasts, whereas the central cells of the dental papilla will be called the primordium of the pulp. The outermost placed dental sac increases only its amount in collagen fibers at this time, and thus undergoes differentiation into its major dental tissue types of cementum, periodontal ligament, and alveolar process later than that of both the animal organ and dental papilla. Final stages of odontogenesis include the apposition stage, during which the enamel, dentin, and cementum are secreted into successive layers. These hard dental tissue types are initially secreted as a matrix, which is an intercellular substance of surrounding medium that, in this case, is artificially mineralized. However, the matrix serves as a framework for relative full mineralization to the tissue type's expected level. The level of mineralization varies between enamel being the hardest, with dentin the next hardest, and finally to cementum, which has a similar hardness to bone tissue. The final stage of odontogenesis, the maturation stage, is reached when the matrices of the dental tissue types subsequently fully mineralize to their correct levels. It is important to note that the period of time for these two final stages varies according to the tooth evolved, but overall involves the same chronology as the initiation of odontogenesis. Events in the production of animal and cranial dentin include the formation of preameloblasts, odontoblasts, and dentin matrix, ameloblasts, and enamel matrix, as well as the dentinal-enamel junction from the basement membrane. After the formation of inner enamel epithelium in the bell-shaped enamel organ, these innermost cells grow even more columnar as they elongate and differentiate into preameloblasts, lining up outside the basement membrane. The nucleus in each cell moves away from center to the position farthest from the basement membrane. This movement in the nuclei of each inner enamel epithelial cells occur during cellular repolarization. In future development, the preameloblasts will induce dental papilla cells to differentiate into dentin-forming cells, and then will themselves differentiate into the cells that secrete enamel. After the inner epithelium of enamel differentiates into preameloblasts, the outer cells of the dental papilla are induced to differentiate into odontoblasts by newly stepped up preameloblasts. During these times, these cells also undergo repolarization. After the differentiation, the odontoblasts begin dentinogenesis, or the appositional growth of dentin matrix, or predentin, laying down on the side of the now disintegrating basement membrane. After the differentiation of odontoblasts from the outer cells of the dental papilla and the formation of predentin, the basement membrane disintegrates. The disintegration of the basement membrane allows the preameloblasts to contact with the newly formed predentin, which induces the preameloblasts to differentiate into ameloblasts. After this, they begin amelogenesis. or the oppositional growth of the animal matrix, lying it down on the side of the now disintegrating basement membrane. The animal matrix is directly secreted from Tom's process, which is an angled distal part of each ameloblast that faces the fully disintegrated basement membrane, formed from the group movement of the ameloblasts away from the basement membrane. With the newly formed animal matrix in contact with the dentin, mineralization of the disintegrated basement membrane occurs, forming the dentino-animal junction. However, the odontoblast, unlike ameloblast, will leave attached cellular extension in the left on the predentin, the odontoblastic process, as they move away from the dentino-animal junction. Each odontoblastic process is contained in a mineralized cylinder, the dentinal tubule. The maturation through the mineralization of each type of matrix occurs later and is a different process for both animal and dentin. However, the cell bodies of odontoblasts will remain within adjoining pulp, attached by the odontoblastic processes. In contrast, the cell bodies of the ameloblasts will be involved first in the final phases of the mineralization process for active tooth eruption, but will be lost after the eruption of the tooth. The process of development of root takes place long after the crown is completely shaped and the tooth is starting to erupt into the oral cavity. The structure responsible for the development of root is the cervical loop, which is the most cervical part of the animal organ, a bilateral rim that consists of only inner animal epithelium and outer animal epithelium. To form the root region, the cervical loops begin to grow deeper into the surrounding ectomesenchyme of the dental sac, elongating and moving away from the newly completed crown to enclose more on dental papilla, forming the half-thick epithelial root shed. The function of this membrane is to shape the roots by inducing dentin formation in the root so that it is continuous with conrolled dentin. Thus, hairs will determine if the root will be curved or straight, short or long, as well as single or multiple. Root dentin forms when the outer cells of the dentinal papilla in the root area undergo induction and then differentiation and become odontoblasts. The induction occurs similarly to the process that happens in the crown area to produce coronal dentin. After the differentiation of odontoblasts in the root area, these cells undergo dentinogenesis and begin to secrete predentin. As in the crown area, a basement membrane is located between the EE and the sheath and the odontoblasts in the root area. When root dentin formation is completed, this part of the basement membrane also disintegrates, as does the entire hairs. After disintegration of the root sheath itself may become the epithelial rest of Malacia. The groups of cells of epithelium are then located in the mature periodontal ligament, but can become cystic, presenting future periodontal infection. Of cementogenesis from oppositional growth of cementum in the root area also occurs when the hairs disintegrates. This disintegration of the sheath allows the undifferentiated cells of the dental sac to contact the newly formed surface of root dentin. This contact of dental sac cells with the dentin surface induces these cells to become immature cementoblasts. They move to cover the root dentin and undergo cementogenesis, laying down cementum matrix. Unlike ameloblasts and odontoblasts, which leave no cellular bodies in their secreted products, many cementoblasts become entrapped by the cementum they produce and become mature cementocytes in later stages of oppositional growth. As a result of the oppositional growth of cementum over the dentin, the dentinocemental junction is formed where the disintegrating basement membrane between the two tissue types was located.